guys, if you're on this channel, it means that you probably have a room in your house or your dungeon or your tower that looks like this, because you're a toy collector. And whether you're a new toy collector or an old one, you may have encountered issues with displaying your toys. In other words, toys have a way of, shall we say, falling, and especially, not necessarily, breaking, but pieces get lost. Now, not everyone displays their toys on a shelf. There's lots of ways. Some people just keep them in bins around their office or in sliding drawers. Well, I guess it could be doors, but they're drawers. Or, there's other ways of attaching figures, things like, there's clips for putting them against your desk, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is the My Belt system, although it does tend to fall off your shelf after about a year when the glue dries, but that's not important right now. All right. Well, if you are displaying figures en masse on a shelf, you're probably familiar with how domino-like they are. They can basically, one figure falls, hits another, and now suddenly your entire collection that you've spent so much time getting into the perfect position is all over the floor. Obviously, this can be solved with stands, but stands also take up display space, and they tend to make figures maybe look less organic. You can't always pose them in fighting stances when they're on stands. Now, you can also, just sort of squish everything together and have figures leaning on each other, but this can be a mass domino if one of the ones in the back just tips over. So I want to go through and talk about not only tips for displaying toys, but how to make them look dynamic. Tips for making your toy display look great. And of course, definitely want to address how to stop your figures from falling over if you're not using stands. All right, so we're going to go through some display tips. And if you're new to collecting, this would be a good place to start. One thing is rows, obviously, work great with figures behind and in front. But the big thing is always start from the back. And this isn't just when you're setting up your display. Let's say you want to grab that tuxedo Indiana Jones in the middle there. Well, don't. You want to take away the figures in front of him first and then get to the one. Because yes, while you might be able to reach for it, you take the risk of accidentally knocking one of those indies in the front, and when they fall on the ground, well, in other words, if you want to work on the front of your display, start with the back. Never, ever start with the front, even if you're just trying to correct someone. If they're in the back, remove the figures that are in front first before adjusting, because, yeah, that force of gravity, it will domino figures, and it can be a harsh mistress. Believe me, I have crawled on the floor many times looking for lost action figure accessories, including looking for the Holy Grail itself. That was kind of funny. All right. So avoiding getting figures to just fall over flat, what else can you do to avoid this? And as I said, that domino kind of nature of action figures. Well, there is definitely some structure about placement. You obviously don't want to wind up walking into your office or tower or dungeon and seeing your floor completely littered with your collection. And you want to be conscious of how gravity works. When something is falling while you're on display, watch it. Look at how far accessories can fall. I mean, the rope only fell like a few inches, but look, all the way over there is his little book. I mean, look at that. That's like, almost 4 feet. Yes, accessories can fly across the room. So if something is falling while you're setting up a display, watch the object that's falling and watch where it falls. You will save yourself hours crawling around looking for accessories. It's also not a bad idea to have a sneeze guard. Well, not literally a sneeze guard, but putting something in front of figures on bottom shelves while you're working on the top so an accessory doesn't bounce into a bottom shelf display and get lost between figures. That happens all the time. So setting up, whether it's a, just piece of cloth, piece of wood, blocking that off can be huge. All right. Now, you also obviously want to think about how things look together, and it's not always necessary to put larger things in front. You can create really dramatic looks with large things in the middle or in the back. But keep in mind, you can also use larger figures as a tool. So putting them sporadically placed so their other figures lean against them, you can use the leaning of one against the other. In other words, I specifically have my beast figure in the middle, so if a figure behind him falls, the larger figure will catch that domino and prevent it from hitting the ones in the front. All right, another really big thing to talk about is learning to let it go. And no, I'm not talking about the Ice Queen. I'm talking about, understanding when a display just isn't working. it's really hard to do this in almost everything. As a writer, you have to learn to be able to throw away paragraphs, if not pages and chapters, when they're not working. Well, there's a lot of times you're setting up a figure display and it just isn't working because figures keep falling. Well, it's time to scrap the entire display and try it a different way. There's nothing wrong with starting over. Fighting a display that is not working is only going to lead to frustration. And so many people just keep saying, it's got to be this way, it's got to be this way. No, start over. Do it a different way. A way where the figures will actually stand up. All right, let's talk about eye line. Have you ever noticed how all of the cereal characters are always looking down? It's because they're looking at the kids. Because when kids look up, they can say, oh, Mom, buy me that Frosted Flake box. I want those Honey Smacks. That's why all cereal mascots are always with their eyes pointed towards a child. So definitely there's a lot to be gained from thinking about the eye contact with your action figures and turning them to exactly where you are. I especially like doing this at my desk, where I have all of my figures turned at a slight angle, so no matter where I'm looking on my desk, I can make direct eye contact with a figure, like they're looking directly at me. It tends to personalize a display, and, well, it got to make it a lot more friendly and fun, too. Finally, when you're putting your display together, it's great to use the fact that action figures are one of the only mediums that can go through any kind of IP. In other words, you can take licensed characters from different owners and put them together on your shelf and make your own display. You really can't do this with almost anything else. You're not going to see a comic book with all the characters on the shelf. Well, obviously, the action figure I made of myself and my wife and my daughter behind there aren't going to be in anything. All right, that's not important. The point is, you can create some really funny displays by specifically putting different IPs juxtaposed to each other. So it's highly encouraged because it's a great fun way to display toys and show everything you love about pop culture through the medium of toy displays. I hope you enjoyed this video and it was a good look and some tips of how to display your toys better. If you like this video, please do share it with others. It's the best way to show support for this channel. Thanks for watching, thanks for sharing, and I'll see you in the next video.